Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Living Ageless and Bold. Sadly, everyone is impacted by a loved one who is suffering from cognitive decline. We all know somebody, whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's. And my guest today, Dayna Steele, she's a playwright. She's a star of the award-winning play, The Woman in the Mirror, based on her book, Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine. She's a longtime rock radio Hall of Famer. She spent years on the radio in Houston. She has a fan base called the Steelworkers. We'll talk about that. She's a leading advocate for Alzheimer's caregivers. She's a podcaster, keynote speaker. She's an author of 17 books. She is a rock star. So welcome, Dayna.
God, that just wore me out. I need to stop doing so much.
Very impressive. So you're doing amazing, amazing work. But I want to hear about your radio days. Like, how did you get into that?
You know, I got into that on a dare in college. I graduated a year early from high school, so I was 16 when I went to college. And, you know, I had an apartment and a college ID and a car and a boyfriend and a band. I was having a great time. But somewhere in there, I went to a party and met a DJ from the local top 40 station. And he was so cute and I was so impressed. And I thought if I auditioned for the student radio station, I would impress him and he would ask me out. And I went and auditioned at Texas A&M University. And you know what? The minute I put on those headphones, Christina, I just felt like I was home. I had changed my boyfriend, my apartment, and my major every few months. And just sitting in that little booth with the headphones on, it was like I could be anybody. I wasn't tiny little, Dana Nicholson at the time. I wasn't just tiny little bullied, geeky Dana. I had this voice and I could be anybody. Now, of course, there's cameras in the studios, which I would have hated back then. But I just started going to the radio station more than I went to class, ended up taking a job as an admin secretary at a radio station in Houston, at a rock station. After I'd been there for about 3 weeks, I went into the program director and I said, I have a license, which was a big deal then. You had to take a test at the FCC and everything to get a license back then. And I said, I have experience. And I had just turned 18. He patted me on my head, literally, laughed at me and sent me out of his office. That was on a Friday afternoon. And that night, the midnight to 6 guy didn't show up. And he and all the other DJs were too high to go on the air, and they knew I lived across the street. So they called and said, okay, you're on. And the guy didn't show up the next night, and I got his job. So it just kind of grew from there.
There are so many stories, like people I have interviewed with stories like that. I don't know if you
always tell people what you want and need, because you never know what's going to happen.
You never know. Hoda Kotb, we went to the same college, went to Virginia Tech, and I interviewed her for a Women in Business event that we did. And her story is so similar. She graduates from college. She's sure she's going to get this great job, being a TV person. And she literally goes market to market and goes to the smaller market, all the way down. And I think it was Memphis, Tennessee. And she walked in and the news director said, well, Ann isn't here today, and if you can fit into her jacket on the back of her door, you can do it.
And that's how it works. And you just do it, and you go, and shaking from head to toe, and then you killed it. Then you did what you loved, you passion. I mean, you probably didn't have filed records. I made coffee. I swept floors. I was still a secretary Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights I would do midnight to 6. So I'm not sure where I slept in there, but I just I took advantage of it, and then I kept interviewing at KLOL, which was the station I grew up listening to, and I interviewed 4 times, and I finally got a job there. And again, it was because somebody got fired last minute for saying, here's more Zeppia effers live from a concert, and before you could cuss on the radio. And I just happened to call at about the same time they had fired her.
So I'm curious back then, because we are of this age, was it mainly men as DJs?
It was all men. I was the only, it's almost still all men. But yeah, I was, I got a job at that student radio station. And then not long after that, I got hired at a commercial top 40 station in College Station, Texas, because they were getting ready to be hit with an EEOC suit because they had no women. And I was the only woman they knew in the when had a license and had experience and could go on the air. I was, when I finally started doing middays, I was told you'll never do morning drive, you'll never do afternoon drive, and you'll never make the kind of money the guys make. It's just, that's not a woman's job. And I did all of it. And, I'm still relevant and they're not. So there.
I love it. Another interview. I want everyone to listen to all these interviews too, because there's just such a pattern. Hannah Storm, ESPN. Oh,
Hannah was on the air with me in Houston. So I have a great Hannah Storm story. Hannah's like 8 feet taller than me. She's just tall. I'm short, but we were on the air around the same time, and we both had, short hair at the time. Whatever. We looked a lot alike, except that she was 8 feet taller. And she and a friend of hers had imbibed a little too much on Bourbon Street. And they were stumbling down Bourbon Street when somebody walked up and went, I know you. And she goes, hey. And they go, you're Dayna Steele. And she goes, yes, I am. So yes, Hannah, love Hannah. I've got a picture somewhere of the two of us together. I'll have to find it for you.
But when she told me that she started out as a DJ because she's mailing out to all these TV stations and she got hired as a joke.
Yeah, she was literally on the competitors. She was on one rock station and I was on the other. Even though we were competitors, we had to get in there and really, hang out, support each other.
Girl power, stick together. So tell me about your groupies, your steelworkers.
Steelworkers. They're not groupies. They're steelworkers. The morning team started calling their listeners the Groove Dogs. And the night guy was calling his listeners the Outlaws. Outlaw Dave, you're the Outlaws. And I just kind of jokingly to my friend one day, my best friend Christy, said, I need a name. And she goes, and that was when I was doing 10 to 3, Monday through Friday during the day. And she said, well, everybody listens to you at work. You could be Steelworkers. And I was like, I like that. And it literally has stuck. I was standing in line in Panama in customs when the woman behind me finally said, excuse me, are you Dayna Steele? I'm a steelworker. My kids are like, oh, my God, why is it everywhere we go? It's a name that just stuck, and we still use it. And I so appreciate the fact that people still remember and still use that. And I tried so hard to distance myself from that when I started becoming a business writer and a business speaker. And then I realized, the majority of my followers, the majority of my fans, my base were those people that, they didn't care if I was writing business books and giving business speeches. They still wanted to be steelworkers and they wanted to follow along. And they were maturing as I was maturing. They were getting married as I was getting married. They were having kids. They were going into business, and they couldn't stay up past 8:30 at night anymore. So we've all grown together. But I have a whole new, new group of steelworkers who are in their 20s, who are in their 30s, who are in their 40s, and it's just been an incredibly supportive group. So they're fans, they're followers. You can call them whatever you want, but they're steelworkers.
That's awesome. So how did you make that transition from this radio career to this entrepreneurship?
I got fired for being pregnant. Yeah. The morning team was rather risque, and as time went on, they got more and more risque. There were always dancers in there from the local, topless bar. There were always naked people in the control room. It was not theater of the mind. It was actually happening. And it just got to the point where I was just getting so bitchy about, like, excuse the graphicness of it, but the pubic hairs on the control board in the morning. And I would not go on the air until they cleaned all that up. And about the same time, I was also pregnant with my first child. And they literally gave me a letter that said, you know, you make too much money. We're going to buy out the rest of your contract. You're complaining too much about the dancers in the morning. And we told you to stop talking about your pregnancy. We don't want you to talk about it. It's not cool, whatever. It was all in a letter. I mean, we eventually went to the EEOC, and the head of the regional EEOC Gulf Coast literally came out of her office and went, "Is this real?" But it forced me, you know, people in media, I don't know how it works in other industries, but people in media are absolutely convinced that their lives will be over if they leave TV, if they leave radio, if they leave, and you're kind of always told that, you know, you're always on the verge of being fired when you're in television and radio and even in print media. So that's all I had done since I was 17 years old. And here I was 31, 32, no, 36. Yeah, 36. And it's all I had ever done. And it's like the proverbial
let me
kicked
guess.
out of the nest, and I had to learn to fly.
And I bet you soared. You didn't just fly, you soared.
I realized I was talented, and I was good at self-promotion, and I was good at marketing, and I could promote others. The very first person I went to, my friend Gwen Griffin, we weren't even friends. We were acquaintances, but she had started her own PR firm, and she was incredibly successful. And I had done a little bit of work for her, a couple of things, some voiceovers or whatever. But I went to her and I said, I have an honest question. I am the queen of self-promotion. I can market and promote myself like crazy, which is how I became. I didn't do weather forecast or PSAs or play Van Halen any different than any other DJ. What I did do was promote the heck out of myself. And I said, do you think people would take me? I didn't go looking for a job, but I went to her as a mentor. Could I take my skills in self-promotion and marketing and use those in business with a PR firm, with a marketing firm, and would people take me seriously? And she said, I will hire you right now. And she hired me on a contract basis, and I worked with her, and that really started to build my confidence. Again, we go back to ask for what you want and need. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. Don't be afraid to ask people, what do you think? I went to somebody recommended I talk to this company, Shelton and Cottle at the time, that were doing crisis communication for a lot of the oil companies and chemical companies, which are all over the Houston Gulf Coast area. And they do crisis communication training. And I said, somebody suggested I call you, that sometimes you use like fake reporters after you've put people through their paces, and then you ambush them to see how they do in an interview situation. Hired me immediately as a contract worker, worked with them for 10 years, playing the mean reporter, asking questions I never would have asked. But it was so fun to be mean to these executives and go, you know, when's the last time you blew up a neighborhood? You know, and so I want to know, maybe
to absorb that nugget, though, because it's so important. Just ask. I raise my kids that way. What's the worst anyone's going to say? No, I mean, don't ask him to rob a bank for you. But if you're asking for a mentor, you're asking for a position. I mean, whatever.
Just
ask.
How's anybody going to know what you want or need? Every Monday, I post a hashtag Motivation Monday, and I do it on my Facebook and I do it on LinkedIn. And it's basically, what do you need to succeed this week? I'm not saying I can help you, but you can use my platform and my network and tell people, and be very specific, and do not write a dissertation. Just a very short, specific, where are you? What do you need? What do you want? And maybe somebody can help you. You know, one of the skill sets that I said I never had, though, was asking for money. And even that, I've run for Congress twice now, and I learned in that first congressional run, that was the part I hated, asking for money. I learned early on, just ask, and people will say yes or no, and you say thank you and move on, and they may come back 6 weeks later and go, here's a donation. I mean, just ask. I didn't lose any friends. Right. I didn't lose any family.
You're not mean about it. You're not, hey, this is.
Nobody was mean. Well, a couple of people were mean to me.
But you don't want them around you anyway. Mean people suck.
And you know what? You also, when you ask and put yourself out there, I have met some of the most incredible people and formed the most incredible relationships by getting out and doing things that scare me. You know, running for Congress. I remember very distinctly the very first, I got this older woman on the phone and she was like, "Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you, but I can't give you a dime. I'm in independent living. I'm on a restricted income now." And I was like, "Well, Ms. Benson, that's very sweet of you. And it's been a pleasure speaking to you." She said, by the way, did you ever know my husband? He was in politics. And I went, "Mrs. Benson, is your husband Lloyd Benson, the Secretary of Commerce or whatever he was?" She goes, "Yeah. Yes. Do you know him?" And I was like, "No."
I know.
You know, and he had since passed away, but we just had the best conversation. Wow. Or another time I called and this couple, you know, it ended up being, what's her name? It's the actress that plays the crazy little stalking manager on the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It was her parents. Oh. You know, so just put yourself out there. All people aren't going to bite your head off. No. They're not going to scream at you unless you're running for office. But just ask. You know, there's no such thing as failure. Steve Jobs had more failures than he had successes.
I call it failure.
You know, I own every single one of his damn successes, you know.
Yeah, exactly. We fail forward. You can't move forward if you don't fail. And I mentor students and I speak at colleges, and you have to understand that. You can't think you're washed up the first time you get a no or something doesn't work. You know, and I tell the story. I graduated from college with a double major in political science and German. I was going to law school. I was going to be an international lawyer, right? It sounds great till I couldn't do well on the LSAT. And that changed that whole plan. So I tell them, like, that was my first failure, my first major failure at 21.
It's all just a lesson learned, isn't it? Yeah.
Stepping stones. It's all stepping stones. Okay. So let's talk about your mom. Because I know that was hard and unexpected and something that a lot of people who are listening and watching have gone through or are going through. I know a lot of my friends.
And the numbers are going to double in the next 20 to 25 years, which is really frightening. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in March of 2013. She passed away 2.5 years later in October of 2015. And I chronicled the entire thing on Facebook, beginning with just letting people know because I couldn't call any more people. She knew so many people. I thought, if this pisses people off, well, I'm sorry. I just can't keep calling and crying. And the response, and it became a village. It became a community. I look back now, I didn't realize it was therapy for me and for so many others. And when she died, I decided she's not going to have died in vain. And I took those Facebook posts and found the ones that I thought were the most helpful, the most poignant, the funniest, along with comments. And that's the first half of the book, Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine. And then the second half of the book is all the experts I wish I had known existed. Elder care attorneys, advice from neurologists, assisted living specialists, that sort of thing. And, you know, it's been 10 years, almost 10 years since she passed away. And I really had no idea my book would still be relevant. And I know most authors would kill to have a book that's still relevant 10 years later. I'm pissed. So I just am a very loud voice for #Surviving Alzheimer's. It was turned into a play, which I star in. I just do whatever I can to not only help caregivers and families and friends, but also younger people, 20s, 30s, 40s, because it starts then. It starts with your habits then. What you eat. Do you exercise? Do you stress? Do you sleep? Do you brush your teeth? Are you exposed to a lot of chemicals? Are you eating processed foods? All of those things that you can start changing now.
And people don't realize that. I've interviewed a lot of people about this, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, even if you're predisposed to it, I don't know if you know her, and if not, I would love to connect you. Melissa Batchelor.
Oh, I would love to.
She's like the preeminent. She's an RN PhD about Alzheimer's. And her podcast is This Is Getting Old. And she's been on several times, but it doesn't have to be. There are things you can do.
Right. I mean, number one thing you can do is sleep. The very number one thing. There's even an article that came out again today that it's the number one thing you can do at any age to slow the progression of any sort of cognitive decline and improve your brain health, because that is when your brain heals itself. A dark room, no screen, you know how to sleep. And finding it, my mom didn't sleep. She, I look at all the things she did. She didn't sleep. She would wake up in the middle of the night stressing. She stressed over everything. Nobody ever saw that but me. But she didn't sleep. She had horrible dental health, horrible dental hygiene. Look how close this is to your brain. Look how close it is.
And your heart. It's directly correlated. Your
heart health
and heart health, are connected.
No, so I really didn't expect to be doing this. 10 years, 12 years, well, 12 years, over 12 years since the diagnosis. But I've learned a lot, and I know the play helps people. I know the book helps people. I got the very first draft of my book proposal done yesterday, finally, which I'd rather have a root canal. But it's a book for after, it's a book for caregivers in recovery. Because after you lose that loved one, you realize you've already gone through the 7 stages of grief. Now you're in a whole new 7 stages of emotions. One that really surprised me was jealousy. When somebody goes, because I'm not a jealous person. I've never been jealous of boyfriends. I've just never been jealous if somebody has something I want or whatever. The first time I felt it, it was such an ugly, overwhelming, dark feeling. And it was because somebody said, oh, I got to go pick up my mom. She's 98. She's at Zumba. And I was just like, well, F you. That should have been my mom. Why me? And I was like, whoa, that's an ugly reaction. I didn't say it out loud, but, and I really started to examine some of the things that I was still feeling. And then doing this play, having to work, I'm not an actor, and having a director pull this stuff out of me and a co-star say, well, I bet your mom did this because of this. And I was like, oh my God, I never even saw that. So it's an ongoing learning journey to recover from caregiving. And the question I hear more often than not is, but when am I going to be me again? And you have to realize you won't. You are never going to be the way you were, whether you're caregiving for Alzheimer's or cancer or whatever. It completely changes you. And you have to learn how it's changed you, the negative things it's done to you, and what you can do to fix those.
That book's going to be very powerful. That's great that you're doing it.
It's hard writing it because I'm living some of it right now, or I've gone through the emotions. But I said to my husband once, it was just a few months ago, it's kind of where the book came from. I said, I felt like I was in a dark place for a long time, but I feel like this play is bringing me light. It's bringing me out of the darkness. I don't have that darkness anymore. He goes, oh yeah, you do. You just hide it better. And
Tell
I was
us
like,
a little bit about the play, because I imagine it's got to be a little bit cathartic for you to.
Have you ever seen the show Come From Away about 9/11? It's an incredible musical. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend go watch it on Apple TV if it's still there. But how do you make a fun musical about 9/11? I learned from this musical that The Woman in the Mirror is a play that stars 2 women. It's me playing me, and then it's a woman playing my best friend and my mother alternating. She puts on the glasses and becomes my mom. And just as you start to cry, we make you laugh. And just as you start to laugh, we make you cry. But that's what it's like being a caregiver. One minute you're laughing at the crazy thing your mom's done, and the next minute you're crying and just miserable. And We've done 126 rewrites. I'm very excited to say we finally have a final script. I don't think I'd ever done this if somebody had told me, A, how long the process is, and B, how many times you have to rewrite it. But it's called The Woman in the Mirror. It is a journey you will never forget, and it is a love letter. I tell people it's an on-stage manual for caregivers. It's a guide for family and friends, and it is an opportunity to learn and laugh for everyone else. And it is. It's a love letter to my mom, and it's a love letter to caregivers who are often such unsung heroes.
What a beautiful gift to your mother's legacy.
Well, and I keep saying I'm through, I'm done, I'm going to hire actors, I'm done with it. And then, somebody comes up to the table afterwards to get a book signed, and they look at me and they just start crying. And so I just drop everything and get up and hug them, and all ages. And everybody still feels like they're alone. Everybody still feels like nobody understands what they're going through. And particularly with Alzheimer's, the scary thing is people will say, well, what's coming? And I'm like, oh, that's the problem. You have no idea. It can be.
Have a huge fan of the movie The Notebook. I've seen it 1,000 times, but you'll have moments when they're back and you're thinking,
those little moments of lucidity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was driving with my mom, and she was really getting to the point where she just kind of sat and she had her head against the window, and I stopped at a red light and she went, I am never going to drive again, am I? And I went, oh, Lord, I hope not. We both laughed. I mean, it was in her old voice. She was sitting up. Her eyes were sparkling. And I swear to God, the light changed and she went back. And it was like, where'd she go? I had 3 really strong moments of lucidity. And that was one of them. I'll never drive again. And the other one was right the day before she died.
Wow.
I said, I'll be back tomorrow. And she sat up and looked at me. I mean, she was in a wheelchair. She just sat up and looked at me and went, huh. And I was like, well, I know what I'm not wanted. But yeah, it is. So we do all these things in the play, but we do the funny things. Like she would ping peanut M&Ms across the room and hit this poor man in the head all day long. It was just like, Mom, stop. Mom, it's not funny. Stop.
You have to tell, because we're getting close to wrapping up, but I laughed. I watched one of your talks. Tell the Chick-fil-A story.
Okay. My mom loved Chick-fil-A. Now, I don't know what your politics are or whatever, but she loved.
I love Chick-fil-A. We'll talk about the food.
She loved Chick-fil-A. And one day the activities director dressed 12 of them in cow shirts and cow hats, because if you do that on the anniversary of Chick-fil-A, you get a free meal. So there's 12 of them. They load up in the assisted living van and they go and they're standing in line. And the first woman gets unsteady and she falls and she knocks. I mean, they went down like dominoes. And of course, I made sure everybody was okay. There were no broken hips. I don't know. It was a miracle. Everybody was fine. Everybody got their free Chick-fil-A. And then I had to post, how can you not call this cow tipping? It still cracks me up on stage when I do it.
But I love that you're able to find some humor in such a difficult situation.
Or the woman who told me she walked in on her grandmother watching hardcore porn, and her grandmother went, they have never done this on The Young and the Restless before.
I saw that too.
But you have to laugh. If you don't laugh, you'll cry.
You'll cry, right? And yeah. And you had no indication of it. There was no signs in your family.
No, I mean, nothing in our family. We've never even had a broken bone, no cancer, no broken bone, no nothing. But now that I know so much about it, I can look back. She had Post-it notes on everything, entire conversations written out. If Dayna asked this, say this. She was doing crazy things like, she said the microwave broke and I replaced it. I look back now, I think maybe she didn't put the microwave popcorn in the microwave. She maybe tried to cook it on the stovetop and burned the microwave. Just little things, the repetitive stories, the taking her to Vegas after Dad died, and she kept asking, when are we going home? This is a woman who loved to travel. I look back and there were a lot of things like Mom, Christy's moving back. That's great, honey. Who's Christy? Christy was my best friend since I was 12 and my maid of honor. Remind me again who Christy is? Things like that. That you can look back now. And she strung high-end pearls. And she mailed a $5,000 necklace back to the wrong person. Fortunately, it was somebody who called me and went, I don't think your mom meant to mail this to me. So it was things like that now I look back and go, oh, the doctor said she had been hiding it for 5 to 7 years. Yeah, so she's a pretty smart cookie. And I think it's when my dad died, between my dad dying and me moving her closer to me, I completely, I threw away all the Post-it notes. So I threw away her memory, not knowing I was doing that. And it totally broke her routine. She was, when you break a routine, and she hit her head. And neurologists will tell you they don't know exactly why it happens. But when you have a head injury, especially when you're older, if you have cognitive issues, it puts everything in fast forward. So yes, now I look back and go, wow, I missed all of this. And you still feel the guilt every once in a while. Should I have gotten her to the doctor sooner or whatever? But that's more of what the play and the book are about, is you just can't keep second guessing yourself. It's like when you have a kid, they put the kid in your hands and say, bye. There is no manual. When they say your mom has Alzheimer's, go home. Well, what do I do? And please, if you don't take anything else from this interview, sit down and talk to your family and have a plan that doesn't include, oh, my kids will take care of me. Right. You need a plan. You really need a plan.
Well, that's a perfect way for us to wrap it up. I would like you to think back and what piece of advice, because you, again, working in a male-dominated field, kind of getting pushed out because you were pregnant and then ending up a very successful entrepreneur. What would you tell your 35-year-old Dayna?
You don't realize it yet, but everything you're doing to help other people is going to come back to you in a positive way when you least expect it, which is now my mantra. The more you do to help others, the more successful you will become.
I so believe that too. I so believe that. So thank you. And everybody listening and watching, like I said, we've all been impacted. Dementia, Alzheimer's. This was a great interview. Your book sounds amazing. You gave some great tips about make a plan. Don't beat yourself up if you're going through this, but share this episode with anyone who's going through it, because it really was impactful, really was helpful.
And I do have a bunch of resources for free on my website, like the 28 questions every family should ask. That's a great way to start the plan.
DaynaSteele.com.
DaynaSteele.com. And if you can't get your family to talk about it, just print them out and let's just leave them laying around. Somebody will start reading them.
And we'll have all that in the show notes too. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.